Okay.
All the best.
Namaskar. I'm Priya Singh from Mata Jaipur Public School, Delhi. I'm going to present this program today. We, the entire fraternity of MGKPS, are honored to host this prestigious event. My fellow schoolmates Puneet Kaur, Harkirat Kaur, and Anushka Bhardwaj are here to assist me. During the pandemic, we have lost several great artists of our country. Let's pay homage to all of them. Now I request all the viewers to keep their audios off for the smooth functioning of the program. A very hearty welcome to all of you for today's Great Master Series program of SPIC MACAY. SPIC MACAY is a society for promotion of Indian classical music and culture among youth and has been contributing a lot for the youth since 1977. Today, we have with us India's renowned Hindustani classical musicians, the great tabla and sitar artist, Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji, and the world-renowned flautist, Pandit Ronu Mazumdar ji. Also, the founder of SPIC MACAY, Padma Shri Kiran Seth ji, state coordinators, students from different schools and colleges, teachers, and innumerable volunteers of the society in India and abroad. A very hearty welcome to all of you to the Great Master Series. Today, we will know about the great maestro of India, the famous flautist, late Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji. We will also know about Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji and Pandit Ronu Mazumdar ji, who are present amongst us. Coming to the Great Master Series, it is an endeavor to know our legendary artists who have enriched our Indian music, art, and culture through their immense dedication and contribution. It provides us an opportunity to know about the domains of Indian classical art forms, our glorious cultural and artistic heritage of which we are heirs. Now, I request Harkirat Kaur to introduce the great legendary flautist, late Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji, to the audience. Over to Harkirat.
Namaskar. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I feel obliged to talk about the beautiful journey of late Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji's life. Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji, also known as Amar Jyoti Ghosh, was an Indian flute player and a composer. He was a disciple of Alauddin Khan Sahab and is credited with popularizing the flute as a concert instrument in Hindustani classical music and also the pioneer of Indian classical flute. Pandit ji was born on 24 July 1911 in Barisal, Bengal Presidency in British India. He was named Amar Jyoti Ghosh but was known with his nickname as Pannalal. His father Akshay Kumar Ghosh ji was a sitarist. Pandit ji received his initial training in music from his father, learning to play the sitar. He was married to Parul Ghosh in 1924. She was a talented singer herself and later became a well-known playback singer in 1928. At the age of 18, he started focusing his attention on the flute. Panditji realized that a bigger flute's pitch and sonority would be more appropriate for both classical and light music. He experimented with various materials, including metal and different types of wood, and decided on using bamboo. He finally settled on a flute which was 32 inches long. Having assisted in music production while he was in Calcutta, working with the New Theatres Limited. In 1940, he came to Bombay to further expand his music career. Sneh Bandhan in 1940 was his debut film as an independent music composer. Panditji jointly scored the background for Andhiya in 1952, along with Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab and Pandit Ravi Shankar ji. He was the first one to introduce the 7-hole flute. He he incorporated what is known as the Tevra Madhyam hole placed off the center line of fingering holes at the bottom of the flute. Veteran flautist Nityanand Haldipur, who is his direct disciple, explains that this hole was designed specifically to play the Tevra Madhyam Ma or fourth note of the lower octave, especially in rags such as Puriya and Bihar. Panditji invented another bass fluid with just four holes, which was almost 40 to 42 inches long. This additional hole makes the Indian flute playable almost exactly like the Western recorder, which only has another additional rear hole placed above towards the mouthpiece that remains closely held by the left thumb. The long bamboo flutes he devised are popularly played by subsequent flautists to render Hindustani classical music. He has produced notable students. Many of them have become renowned artists all over the world. For his enormous contribution to the field of Indian classical music, he will always be remembered before, forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Harkirat, for introducing great master Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji to all of us. Now I request Puneet Kaur from my school to introduce Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji to all of us. Over to Puneet.
Namaskar. It's an immense delight to talk about you, sir. Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji is an Indian tabla and sitar maestro. He is a tabla player from the Farrukhabad Gharana. He received initial training from his late father Padma Bhushan Pandit Nikhil Ghosh ji. Pandit ji's elder uncle was the flautist Pandit Pannalal Ghosh, who was popularly regarded as the father of North Indian flute. Later, he studied under Ustad Ahmad Jan Tirakhwa and Pandit Gyan Prakash Ghosh ji. He also received training in sitar and vocal music from his father Pandit Nikhil Ghosh ji and later learned from Pandit Buddhadev Das Gupta ji. His first tabla solo broadcast was at the age of 4 in 1960. As an accompanist too, he has supported Pandit Ravi Shankar ji, Ustad Vilayat Khan Saab, Pandit Nikhil Banerjee, Pandit Jasraj ji, Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma ji, Ustad Amjad Ali Khan Saab, and many others. He is currently director of Sangeet Mahabharati in Mumbai and as distinguished guest professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay for the Self for Human Values. His brother is Pandit Dhruva Ghosh ji, who plays the instrument sarangi. His son, Mr. Shan Ghosh ji, is also a tabla expert. He has received numerous titles and awards. The Tal Mani and Sur Mani conferred by Sur Singar Samsad, Mumbai. The Achievement Award given by the Lieutenant Governor of California, USA. Sir Sadhana Ratna, Sangeet Natak Academy Award for 2014. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you, Puneet, for introducing Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji to all of us. Now I request Anushka Bhardwaj to introduce Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji, a flute exponent of India. Over to Anushka.
Namaskar. It gives me immense pleasure to talk about the eminent flautist Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji is an Indian flautist in the Hindustani classical music tradition. Today, Pandit ji is amongst the most popular musicians of flute and is especially popular within the younger generation for his creative improvisations. His music is rooted in the Maihar Gharana, which has musicians of eminence like Pandit Ravi Shankar ji and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab to his credit. Apart from his concerts all over India in different music festivals, he also participated in the Festival of India in Moscow and Asia 82 in New Delhi. He has also performed in many countries of the world. Pandit ji is also known for a number of collaborations and jugalbandis with other leading instrumentalists. Being an innovative composer, he has also composed several pieces in fusion of Hindustani classical with other forms of music, particularly Western classical music. Recently, Pandit ji conducted a concert of 5,378 flautists on the stage called Venunad under the banner of Art of Living. This event was also recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records. In 1981, Panditji won the first prize at the All India Radio competition and President's Gold Medal. He has also associated with Pandit Ravi Shankarji on albums like Passages and Chants of India. He has more than 30 audio releases to his credit. He won the prestigious Aditya Vikram Billa Award in 1999 and a Lifetime Achievement Award on the occasion of Jyoti Divas in 2001. In 2014, he won the prestigious Sangeet Natak Academy Award. With this, I welcome Panditji to the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka, for nicely introducing Pandit Majumdar ji. On behalf of our school and whole SPIC MACAY fraternity, I welcome Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji and Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji to this program. Now, we will have a question and answer session with Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji and Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji, followed by some video clips of Guru Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji. Over to Harkirat for the first question.
Namaskar, Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji. Sir, I had a question. So, what were Pandit Pannalal ji's other interests? So, please tell us.
Sir, can you
Panditji,
please
your mic is
unmute
on mute,
yourself?
I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. People always, everyone knows of Pannalal Ghosh ji as the greatest flutist from North India, Hindustani music. He was also known as the father of Hindustani flute because this big bamboo flute that you see nowadays played by many great flutists, including my younger brother, Ronu Majumdar, who is sitting with us, who is with us today. This was invented by my uncle, by Pannalal Ghosh. He was my uncle. He was my father's older brother. And the other interests, there were many. The most important was that he was an expert at martial arts. Oh. He was a boxing, he won championship in boxing and wrestling also. And more than that, he was a very good marksman, using the gun and the bow archery and sword fighting and lathi fighting, and he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So these were his passions in his younger days. And there was a very important transit period in his life when he, as a young boy, he used to play the small village flute, the rural flute. And between that and his whole discovery of playing the big flute, inventing it, there was a small passage of time when he was a gym instructor in Kolkata. And at that time, he was probably in his 20s. He was also very actively involved in the fight for India's freedom. So he was a very active, he worked together with actively with revolutionaries who used to fight for Indian independence. And that's about it. And that way, of course, he loved photography also. He loved cycling also, and so on. There are many other things. But since we have not enough time, let us discuss about his flute and what he really did to find a place among the historical greats of Indian classical music.
Thank you so much, sir. My next question is to Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Namaskar, Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Sir, I have a question for you. So we just heard that Pandit Pannalal ji used to play a 42 inches flute. So could you please tell us the different types of flute?
Namaskar. So to begin with, there are many types and the variety of flutes exist and comes from the folk music tradition and tribal tradition. Before great Pannalal Ghosh ji, my father's guru, I'll begin with my little bit of Pannababu's connection with my family. My father was not a full-time flute player, but he played flute as a hobby. He was a homeopathic doctor and a great, probably #1 oil painter of India. So Pannababu, met him in Delhi and loved him so much and taught him. That's why I play a little bit of different finger technique than Pannababu, but I use the 7-hole technique which was introduced by Pannababu. So in childhood, when I was 6 years old, I was introduced to Pannababu's technique, which is, I would personally say that the greatest technique, because ragas like Rag Shri, as Nitya Bhai said very rightly, Rag Shri and many rag, even why just to talk about Rag Shri or Purvi or those things, even for normal, just like Yaman Kalyan. So very practically, I'm just explaining, So it's not possible to play with that fluency without this little finger, this pinky, So other than many people do not probably know that even the thumb hole, which many people say that I have introduced, Pannababu did that even that time. It was told to me by my father. So Pannababu did that. And add to more, if you talk about the Drupad style of Alap Jod Jhala, like play the whole Alap Jod like half an hour or so more maybe before starting the composition, that is Drupad style. Anibadda Alap. Alap will have no rhythm. So Pannababu did that also. And then he played Khayal style also, because Khayal was introduced to him only. That play a little bit of Alap, then start the Bada Khayal, and do those Alap in between the Bada Khayal. So it's very short span of his life. Can you imagine? He did so much. And on top of everything, to introduce a folk pastoral instrument to the, Shastrokta Sangeet, which is Raga Sangeet, which needs so much of depth. And to do that, you have to be someone, God's messenger or something like that. So my connection is that. So, and I never met him because I was born in 63 and Pannababu died in 1960. These people never die, I will correct myself, but leaving the material body. So Pannababu, and he could play 3 octave very fluently. If you listen to any of his Puriya, famous Puriya or Darbari, just think in the 1930s, between 30s to 35, he recorded the first Raga album in Bansuri, which no one could imagine. It was always played in the bhajan, or there are Satara. Oh, I forgot your original question, Jan. So Satara flute is there. I played with Mehruddin Langa of Rajasthan. Then there is a Tipara flute. Then there is a Algoja in Punjab. There is a Jodia Pawa in these flutes. I'm talking about the only Indian tradition. Then there are foreigner also. But let's talk about just the Indian. Then if you ask, then I'll tell more about this. So there are huge tradition of every region, every state, different type of flutes. And you must have seen Jodia Algoja putting flute inside and playing with 3 finger here, 3 finger here, Punjab folk. So there are many types of flute. And to my surprise, when I saw the Satara player in Rajasthani folk, the Manganiyas and Langas, Mehruddin Langa became very close to me because we played in Geet Govind together in 90s. So I found this same technique of Algoja in Rajasthani folk instrument, Satara also, folk flute. So huge thing. To bring that folk pastoral instrument into classical music, Pannababu came to this planet, and like Swami Vivekananda ji or Charlie Parker, he went early. So he pioneered it. He introduced this instrument, all follow his footsteps and try to invent. I did little bit of changes in that 4-hole big flute. For the lower octave, I made it 6-hole and named it Shankh Basuri. So to play the low octave alap like a bean kariyam, because I play bean kariyam, bean kar, like Saraswati ji, Tansen's daughter, was a bean kar. Bean kar means the Rudra Veena players. They were called bean kars. So this is a little bit of information what I know about his tradition.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
I
sir.
would like to add also to, if Ronu, if you permit me, can I add some information here?
Oh, sure, Nanda.
Ah.
You are the authentic information giving from that family. I respect you so much, Nanda. Please accept my pranam.
God bless.
Mhm.
God bless.
Such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Ronu. To answer to your question, Harkirat, was about the big flute. Yes, that is what Ronu Bhai had just talked about, the Shankh Basuri that he has named, which Panna Babu had called the bass flute, and he had 4 holes for that instead of 6, the normal 6 on flute. The reason being, the normal flute, the 32-inch flute, can take up to the lower pa. That means suppose this is sa ni dha pa, and with a lot of difficulty it may go up to a little ma if you turn the flute this way when you play. But to reach all the way down to sa ma ga re sa, he felt the need of the big bass flute, and that is why he created. But here I want to cover a very important point. There is a great flutist and researcher called Professor Lion Leifer in America, in Chicago. He's 80 years old now and a very close friend of mine. And I'm sure Ronu Bhai also knows him very well.
Oh, yeah.
So Lion Leifer is a great Bansuri player also, our Indian Bansuri, because he's a grand disciple of Pannalal ji. But he's also one of the finest Western flutists in Western classical music. And he's a member of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra also. He told me that in the West, in an advanced countries like Europe and America, the Western flute, to develop and come to this stage as it is now, took exactly 200 years of research and various great flutists researching upon it. Whereas Pannalal ji, who lived only 48 years, he died at the age of 48, what he contributed, the whole journey that the West traveled in 200 years, he did it in 20 years. Achieved
absolutely
and brought the flute to the level of other instruments recognition. It's not easy to get an instrument recognition as equal to sitar or sarod among the leading instruments. And within his lifetime, he got that recognition for the flute as a concert instrument. And he was a must for any music festival across our country. Any music festival wasn't complete without Pannalal Ghosh. So that was something remarkable to achieve and give a complete instrument, complete in every sense, not only in structure and possibilities, but covering the whole range of music. As Ronu Bhai said, Dhrupad Dhamar Alap, he used to play Khayal. Generally, he was known for his Khayal treatment, but he played Tantrakari also. And his first record of Tantrakari came out in 1933 in a sitar duet with a great master, Muhammad Baksh. And in that he has played Tantrakari. So because what happens is often, there can be different claims, and we don't blame people saying that he played Gayaki and we have introduced Tantrakari. So to clarify that, I want to say that Tantrakari was introduced before the next generation of flutists were born. So he had achieved that also, 1933.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. Over to Puneet for the next question.
My question is to Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Sir, please tell us about Pandit Pannalal ji's contribution towards Bansuri Vadan and Indian music. And sir, why was he known as the father of Hindustani flute?
Okay, wonderful. The second part of your question first. Father of Hindustani flute, because before this in classical music, there was never an instrument called flute. It was there, as Ronu Bhai said, in pastoral flute. That means in rural music, in every civilization there has been flute. Okay, let's first know that every civilization around the world. But in
Absolutely.
India, there was the small flute that used to be played, let's say, in villages, in folk music, or in bhajans, in temple music. But a refined art like classical music saw flute for the first time with Pannalalji's contribution. And though he experimented with different material in the beginning and finally settled down on the bamboo, because bamboo gave a far more soulful sound than any other material. Very soulful, you know. And now about his contribution, he I have already covered much of it in my earlier uh, paragraph, but I can add that he was a pathfinder and a path breaker. When I say pathfinder, I mean the whole concept, the whole idea of inventing a bamboo flute and making it possible for succeeding generations to play it. And path breaker means he paved the way for the content in flute playing. What to play in flute? That whole range, a huge range, from Drupad Dhamar to Khayal to Tappa to Kajri Chaiti to Baul to folk music to instrumental music, even the tonguing technique of playing jhala. Jhala is played on generally on string instruments at a very fast speed. When sitar and sarod, you have seen how they end with a lot of high speed techniques. Even that was introduced by him. So the entire range, and therefore he was a path breaker for future flutists. And all flutists always kind of agree and claim that there was no area in flute that he left untouched. The whole possibility of music range, entire spectrum was covered in that short lifetime. And about his other contributions, I'll tell you one or two. Behind every Indian music program, you'll see two tanpuras playing, or one. Tanpura is a four-string instrument which gives the drone. And to make travel easier, he invented the first time the six-string tanpura, which was highly appreciated by his younger colleague, Ustad Amir Khan. And Ustad Amir Khan Sahab started also using six-string tanpuras. That was one. Another contribution, if you have seen a small portable tanpura that's played with sitar and sarod, played with Pandit Ravi Shankar ji and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, that was also an invention by Pannalal Ghosh ji. Okay? Then one more thing Pannalal Ghosh ji did was, I have the photograph of that first tanpuri that was made and gifted to Pannalal ji. So in that gift form with flowers and all that, I have the first tanpuri, which is now a very popular instrument. Then there was something called the surpeti, which means nowadays, of course, we have electronic surpetis and all that. But in the first surpetis was something that was bellowed like a harmonium, but used to give two notes, sa and pa or sa and ma. And that was also introduced by him. And high-pitched tabla. Tablas were always, the highest pitch that was available in those days was C sharp. But to have tablas of D sharp or E, that was Pannalalaji's idea. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for answering the question. Over to Anushka for the next question.
My question is for Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Namaskar, sir. I wanted to ask, sir, as you belong to Maihar Gharana, so how far is your music influenced by Pandit Pannalal ji?
Well, influence, if you say every great artist influenced me, but Pannababu's tone, first of all, the mellow, very, very omani kind of sound, very rounded, very, very full, and he's made from ma, Tibra ma to dha in Puriya touched me so much. So, and whenever I play Rag Puriya or Marwa, where this from Tibra ma to dha mean is very important. So I just, inside my soul, I just keep doing Sastang Pranam to him, that this is his, his forte or his thought, and he's so much of blessing to us to show this path. And another thing, what my father told me about Panna Babu, before I forget that, because I never said this on any of my interview or any of, I'm sure Nayanda must be knowing that in the folk tradition, there is no fixed sa or something. Anybody can use any sa, because it is not a scientific scale or something that this should be Komal or Vadi Samvadi and many things. So closing 3 hole and opening 3 hole, this was also conceived by Panna Babu. Because in folk, anything can be sa. You can play one folk tune from here, or this can be sa, or this can be sa. But this was so much of scientific reason behind it, what he must have thought. Because if you make this sa, then you get perfectly pa here and ma here, and then high pa and things like that. So before that, like in Carnatic music, our re in flute is there sa. In Carnatic flute, you will see this is sa. So in North Indian flute, because we have lot of other way of treating the rag in comparison with Carnatic music. So this was the sa, conceived, constructed by Panna Babu. And of course, his Tharao always influenced me, as you asked me. Tharao means the peacefulness and, where
Stability.
there is no, you're not, stability, that's the right word. In Alap, there is always a divine stability and Tharao.
A very dignified,
like
yeah.
Dignified manner. It's not gimmicky music. It's not something to impress someone, it's so much within. So that has influenced me and, influenced all the flute players, I think.
Yeah, I think
all the Bansuri, I would say, Indian flute.
I think every flute player says that when they shut their eyes and pick up the flute to play, they can see Pannalal Ghosh in front.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir. My next question is to Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji. Namaskar, Pandit ji.
Namaskar.
Sir, could you please let us know about Pandit Pannalal Ghosh ji as a composer?
Sure. I'll tell you, Pannalal Ghosh ji, there is a lot of interesting material I can share with you. He started recording for film music in Kolkata. In those days, it was called New Theaters in Kolkata. And in very short time, I mean, there he was assisting the pioneer music director, India's first music director, R.C. Boral. He was assisting him. And then when he moved to Bombay, the sound of the flute was something new. The film industry had never heard such a sound before. And overnight, he became a rage and extremely popular in a matter of few days with his performance recording as a musician in the film industry. In those days, Bollywood was known as Bombay Talkies. And he was he became a superstar overnight. And he played for many various films and with many noted playback singers. But very soon, his talent as a composer was also discovered. And he composed for many films which were musically very successful, they were hit movies. I'll tell you, in those days, the old timers know about all these movies, not even me, even people much older to me. His films like Intezar, Basant, Andolan, Police, Badi Maa, Pehli Nazar, all these were famous because of his compositions and because of his flute playing also. And he and his, let me tell you about his wife, Parul Ghosh. She was one of the earliest playback singers and uh, a rage in her lifetime. She was what today in our times we find Lata Mangeshkar ji. In those times, it was Parul Ghosh and Noor Jahan. These two were the very important playback singers. And her brother was Anil Bishwas, again one of the greatest composers for film music. And so that means Pannalal ji's brother-in-law. And later, Pannalal ji's compositions, besides in films, since he focused more as a classical performer, but in the last 4 years of his life, that is 1956, the Minister for Broadcasting and Information and Broadcasting under Pandit Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru, that was Keskar, Mr. Keskar. He especially came to Pannalalji's home here in Bombay, in Mumbai, and requested him to become the director of the National Orchestra, All India Radio. And Panna Babu initially was not interested at all because he said that would affect his image and his career, his active career as a classical musician. But Keskar Sahab assured that he will see that his classical career is not affected, but he needed such a top class musician to be the director of the National Orchestra. So Panna Babu finally left for Delhi, and his last 4 years he was the national he was the conductor and composer for the National Orchestra of India. And so this is about the composing skills that you wanted to know. Besides that, he composed and created many ragas which are extremely popular and very attractive ragas that are played by many subsequent flutists. One is Deepavali, which is played by many musicians. And he composed more ragas: Chandramauli, Shukla Palasi, Nupur Dhwani, Kumari, many great ragas. And he added this to the already thousands of ragas in Indian classical music. This was a massive contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to Priyal for the next question.
My next question is to Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Sir, as Pannalal ji made modification in flute, do you think flute is being played in the same way or there has been any changes over the years?
Flute has been the same. You know, there should not be many changes as to make, add metals or things like that, which I personally defer to. And there people do some changes, like, there Raghunath Setji added one key to it for the Tibur Madhyam. So I personally did not want to follow those things because there was two ideas. If someone said it is invention, some said it is limitation because you cannot reach actual, with finger. That's why you're adding the key. So I was going with the other idea because I could achieve this. I was using the seventh hole from the childhood. So some people cannot reach to, then they would add keys and things like that. But basically flute is the same. And it is so much of earthy instrument, if we add other, sometimes we use for the amplification in the microphone some processor of reverb nowadays, because flute is a dry instrument. It doesn't have that natural resonance like sitar has. One string keeps resonance, and the sympathetic string and the jod string, they keep adding. For main artists, it is very easy when you get all sorts of resonance, but here you feel like you are left alone with your just one sound. So reverb is very important. Sometimes you will see to get that effect. Often I also take sometimes my student accompanying me so that we can get that kind of full sound, and like a sitar, something added to you, like other than tanpura. And other than this reverb gadgets or some, so flute needs some reverb always. If you are playing in the hills, then of course natural reverb is there or echo is there. For the auditorium, we add some processor nowadays if the sound guide doesn't have. Other than, I don't like things to add in the flute or make it like something like metal or something. It will lose its essence if we do it. So it remains the same what Pannababu did. Of course, there are many sizes of flute. The basic murli is small, then middle flute. Flute is the only instrument which can, every note becomes sa. And sitar, you cannot make that small and play. Flute, we have flute like a fountain pen. I have it. F small flute. It's like almost like fountain pen, just few inches. And then I have this 45 inches Shankh Bansuri. So its sizes are there, but the originality of Bansuri, Panna Babu's Bansuri, remains the same.
See, one more thing, Panna Babu had a very large palm structure. He had a big, unusually big palm. And so there was a rumor that went all over India that he operated the webs of his fingers in order to reach the distant holes. It is not true. It was a rumor. Even today, many people keep asking me, why did he do that or how did he do that? I said, no, he never did that. He just had a large finger.
He never did.
So he never operated his finger. He could reach those distant holes on the large flute purely because of his large palm.
Thank you, sir.
My father said the same thing. I will just add, Nanda. Absolutely true. My father said that he operated his finger. It's just a rumor. Another thing, I will just add what respected Nanda said very rightly. This was rumor. Dr. Bhanu Majumdar, my father said that this was a rumor. Another thing, if you play the flute, your voice will be distorted. Voice will be gone. These are all rumors. I was probably little bit kind of first flute player. I have not seen others full time singing like me. So my voice was never affected, and I practiced like 12 hours sometimes. Whole night I used to practice, but I can sing in 3 octave and play and nothing affects. These are
Panna Babu also had a very rich voice. I have a recording where only one line he has sung in the middle of his concert. A very rich voice.
See? Absolutely. Absolutely, Nanda.
Can we now have the music, please? Or do you have other questions?
Yeah, my last question is to Pandit Nayan Ghosh.
Okay,
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Sir, so can you please tell us about Pandit Pannalalji's prominent disciples?
Sure. He had many wonderful disciples, and among his earliest disciple was his same age friend, childhood friend, Pandit Haripad Chaudhary, who later came to Bombay, and it was he who first saw and felt the vibes in the Bombay film industry and wrote a letter to Pannalalji in Kolkata that you must come here. The whole Bombay will be taken by surprise at the sound of your flute. You must come here. So that was Pandit Haripad Chaudhary. And then his chief disciple was Pandit Devendra Murdeshwar, who later became his son-in-law. And there were his first disciple in Bombay was Pandit Ras Bihari Desai. There was also Pandit V.G. Karnad, and there was Aminur Rahman from Dhaka, and Gaur Goswami from Kolkata. If you have heard of the popular tabla player Swapan Chaudhary, his father was also Panna Babu's disciple. And now the only disciple of Panna Babu directly who is surviving and very much actively performing is Pandit Nityanand Haldipur. He's like my elder brother, and he is faithfully carrying forward Panna Babuji's style and that essence. Here I want to add something. Panna Babu's music, just like his personality, every musician's that musician is inside as a person, it reflects in the music. And so Panna Babu's music was very peaceful, very dignified, very noble, without any gimmicks. But yet, when he came on the stage, he had such a stage presence. When he walked up on the stage and sat down and played the flute, in those days, there were no auditoriums. Concerts used to be held in big pandals. So you used to have 5, 10, 15,000 people in the audience in those days. The entire audience would be complete pin drop silence and in raptures listening to him with their eyes shut and their bodies swaying from side to side. And that great music used to almost transport the listeners to a different level, of consciousness. And some people can say, to take them into trance or into ecstasy or whatever. But that was the magic of his music. Without any gimmicks, he could lift the whole large audience to a very high level, lift them up. That was very special in all his disciples. Unfortunately, now all of them are no more except Pandit Nityanand Haldipur, who is with us, and may God give him a long life, and may he continue to uh, carry forward Panna Babu's thought process. And our wonderful, my younger brother Ronu Majumdar, and several other flutists who are doing whatever they are doing. I mean, they are only propagating Pannalal ji's work, and they are doing a great job of it.
Thank you, Pandit Nayan Ghosh and Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. It was indeed a fruitful session and we really got to know a lot from you. Thank you. Now I invite our respected principal ma'am to propose the vote of thanks.
Can I add something more?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. How I know, because one is I have been his nephew, but my father, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh, the great tabla maestro of the 20th century, was his inseparable companion. My father was 8 years younger to him, but Panna Babu literally brought up my father in every way, supported him, brought him up, protected him, etc., etc. And they almost most of the records that you today get, whether they are published recordings or concert recordings or on YouTube recordings, many of them, almost 90% of those recordings, the tabla accompaniment is by my father, and they were inseparable. And my father and he were the two brothers in our family who took up music professionally, whereas there were 5 brothers totally. And before us, my grandfather, Akshay Kumar Ghosh, was a sitar player. My great-grandfather, Hara Kumar Ghosh, was a Dhrupad singer and Pakhaj player. My great-great-grandfather, Bankshi Badan, was also a Dhrupad singer. And my great-great-great-grandfather, Ram Lochan Ghosh, was also a Dhrupad singer. So my father and my uncle, Pannalal ji, happened to be the 5th generation of musicians in the family. But the entire family, they were so highly gifted naturally with music that they were natural players or singers or composers, all of them. Even the other brothers who didn't take music professionally were extremely gifted musically. Now, I'll tell you why Pannalalji and my father took a very daring step to take it as a profession. In those days, taking music as a profession, as a career, was looked down upon in society. Musicians were considered among the lowest in society. And this was a very daring step that they took, my father and my uncle. And it is purely because of that today his name is there in history, Pannalalji's name, and my father, Nikhil Ghosh. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to principal ma'am.
Thank you, Beta. What a blessing to be amongst all of you. And Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji, Nayan Ghosh ji, Namaskar. Pratima ma'am ji, namaskar. Wonderful to be with you. And the entire team of SPIC MACAY, which has allowed us this beautiful moment. The way you have explained about Pannalal ji, one can actually imagine, imagine his life, imagine how he has lived, and the wonderful things that you have shared about his life as a takeaway for all my children, where you mentioned that he had diverse interests. The diversity was really large. The kind of flutes that you have explained to the children, the journey of 200 years done in 20 years, how phenomenal. One feels so proud of having somebody like that in our own country and getting recognition for the flute itself, innovating in one's own area of work. Tremendous innovations, the way you have explained to our children, adding new dimensions in flute itself and clarifying certain myths that one's voice is not affected if you play the flute. And the beautiful point about daring to take a profession, which is not so easy. Even till date, I would not say just only in his time. Even at this time when we discuss professions and careers, and when children try and say, "Mummy, मेरे को तो ये म्यूजिक में इंटरेस्ट है और इसमें करियर बनाना है," हमें आज तक ये पेरेंट्स को समझाने में और बच्चों को भी समझाने में दिक्कत होती है कि इसमें भी हम अपना प्रोफेशन बना सकते हैं, provided one has the kind of dedication, the commitment, the ability to innovate, and sheer ferociousness in terms of following up one's profession and giving it all it takes, like Pannalal ji had done, like all of you are doing as great examples for the children. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Beautiful legacy that our children have experienced today. And on behalf of the entire management staff and the children of our MJKPS, I express a heartfelt gratitude to all of you and to Team SPIC MACAY for this beautiful virasa that you have shared with my children. It's wonderful to hear about the Indian artist late Pandit Pannalal ji, also known as a pioneer of Indian classical flute, from Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji and Pandit Ronu Majumdar ji. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to thank Professor Kiran Seth ji, who started this society since 1977 and is constantly working and encouraging the volunteers for taking this momentous movement forward. Thank you, SRF Foundation, for funding the programs. I want to thank all the team members of the Great Master Series program, Mr. Ashok Jain ji, Dr. Pratima Mishra, Mrs. Rinku Chakravarti ji, Abhishek, and the designing group and all volunteers who work relentlessly to bring us all together through this beautiful platform of SPIC MACAY programs. Dr. Pratima Mishra ji, I thank you personally for introducing and arranging this SPIC MACAY series to all of us. A special request from us is to keep this movement growing, as there is so much of us, so much that we all need to learn. And especially at this time, it's important that our children understand the concept, they understand the background, which I'm sure will give them the courage needed to venture in the field of music. And what is music? It's really the soul of life. Music is there in everything that we do. It's a rhythm of life itself. And I thank all of you for being a part of this journey. I thank the children. I'm so happy to see all of you taking such deep interest in the intricacies of flute. And I thank my staff for coordinating this program. And I want to encourage you to keep up this spirit, because music, as I said, is integral as a rhythm of our life. It's there in everything that we do. We simply need to be attuned to our environment. We look forward to being connected with SPIC MACAY in more meaningful ways and look forward to hosting programs in the school once this particular pandemic situation improves. I hope to see you soon in the prangan of MJKPS itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll just remind all the children that the most important part we have, uh, you have heard so much about the great maestro. Now is the time to listen to his music. And as so rightly said by Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji, that his music could take a lot of audience to the trance. So experience that trance, experience that Nad Yog. So we'll be playing 3 videos. First one is from the very archival 2.5 minutes live performance where you can watch him playing. Second is Rag Deepavali, uh, about which Pandit Nayan Ghosh ji explained that it was a raga innovated by him. And third one is a very beautiful little bit of a folk touch dhun from Bengal called Bhatiyali. So
and if time permits, I'll tell you a very short, thrilling story how I found that 2.5 minute film.
yeah, please.
It is something like someone can write a storybook on that.
Please tell us,
Now?
Panditji.
Now?
wo,
Acha.
Yeah.
Acha. Okay, I'll tell you. There was an very elder cousin of mine in Kolkata, and he was making a film, Surer Piyasi, which means someone who is thirsty for sur, that is sound, music. And that was a cousin of mine who was making the film, and he had filmed Pannalal ji for 2.5 minutes, my father on tabla, which we are going to see. And in that film, he had Jugalbandi by Vilayat Khan and Imrat Khan on sitar, and he had Ali Akbar Khan and Nikhil Banerjee. I have all the films. Then he had Hirabai Badodekar, the great vocalist, and Sitara Devi's dance, Kathak dance, as part of that full story of that film. He showed us Pannalal ji's film when I was pretty young in Kolkata, and I was taken aback. That's the only video available on this planet today. And many years later, even after that cousin of mine, he passed away. Once I had a dream that somewhere in Kolkata, and that was so vivid that I knew the path. That road showed me, taking me to a broken building, almost unoccupied, uninhabited, and in my dream. And the whole film roll in a big tin box was lying there. This came in my dream. So I woke up in the morning and I told my father that I have seen such a dream, and uncle's film is in that box in that house. Do you think such a road is there in Kolkata which goes in this direction, this direction? He laughed first. He said, all this is stupid, he said. But you can go. There is a road in Toliganj. Toliganj is a suburb in Kolkata. He said, you can try. And he knew that this was just imagination and it won't work. Believe it or not, I took a taxi, I and my brother, and we went. And along the path, same road that came in my dream, and I did see that broken building, and I stopped the taxi there. And there was a big Bihari watchman with a big danda. So he said, "Kya kaam hai?" I said, "Is building ke andar kya hai?" There were locks on the door. And he said, and the compound was unkempt, with grass growing tall. And he said, I said, "Isme kuch films rakhe hain kya?" He said, "Hey, but you can't, I can't give you access to that." So I said, "Why?" He said, "It's a legal battle between some people. So this is right now under legal thing, binding. So I can't give it to you." I said, "Please let me, do you have the key?" First he said no, but later when I went on persisting, he said, "Yes, I have the key." I said, "Please open it." He said, "No, I can't. I'm under orders." Then I told him that, "See, it's my uncle's film. He's no more. And there's a film of him and I'm a musician. and I want that film. I want the whole world to see that film. I said, so please, I hope you understand what it means. So he said, well, I can't help you. He was very hard in the beginning. And then I bribed him and I told him, can I come after 1 hour, 2 hours? And I'll film, I'll make the copy and I'll give you back the dabba. You can keep it inside. I said, you know, so he said, okay. So I went an hour later there and he opened the door for me. And that room was full of dust, but hundreds of steel rusted boxes in which there were various films, hundreds, spiders, webs, cockroaches, insects, and so much of dust. I went inside, covered my nose and mouth and went inside. And the first stack of several boxes, I laid my hands on, I pulled out about 5 or 6 boxes. And there was one on which in Bengali it was written Surer Piyasi, the title of that film. So I thought maybe it is this only. I looked for more, but no, there was only one. I brought it out and I told him, I'll give it back tomorrow. I'll take it to a laboratory, make a copy and give it back. He said, अरे साहब आप लेके जाइए, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, यहाँ हजारों फिल्म पड़े हैं और इन लोगों का कोर्ट में लड़ाई चलते ही जाएगा. So he was probably very happy because I gave him 500 rupees in those days. So he let me take it. So I took it to a laboratory and we saw the film and Pannalal ji was there. And even Vilayat Khan and Imrat Khan, Ali Akbar Khan and Nikhil Banerjee were all there in that role. So I made a copy of that. And now Pannalal ji's film is available, 2.5 minutes. We are going to watch it.
Thank you, sir. Before I request to the technical team to play the video, I pray for all of you to stay safe and healthy. Wash your hands regularly, practice social distancing, wear your masks properly when you go out. Now, it is a request to all of you to kindly turn off your audios for better connectivity. I request to the technical team to play the video clips of late Pandit Pannalal ji for the audience. Over to technical team.